In the Far East in ancient times, there was a cyclic ritual that was practiced, which was intended to explain the serendipity, randomness, or apparent randomness of the vicissitudes of earthly life and the almost infinite, overwhelming complexities of returning karma. A wagon, heavy laden, would be oriented at the top of a long and steep hill, and the multitudes would congregate on the road beneath and the pathway for this wagon. It was known as Juggernaut. The idea being that when it was released from its moorings, where exactly it would travel or whom it would trample would be the exemplification of what it means to live in life and of the impending, looming disasters that seem to be so unfairly visited upon all peoples at one time or another. More recently in the West, with the development of other faiths, there have been similar attempts to explain the consequences of deeds and the irrevocable nature of those deeds. For example, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam has been celebrated as one of the most beautiful of the works of mankind ever to be composed as poetry. Yet pay attention to the sentiments of one of the quatrains, which he is so renowned for. The moving finger writes, and having writ moves on, nor all thy piety nor wit shall lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all thy tears wash out a word of it. The implication being that the frailty and fallen nature of the entire race of mankind includes within it the penalty for mistakes which have been made, and no amount of remorse or pleadings is ever going to erase from the memory of nature what has once taken place. It is there indelibly for all time immemorial. Another associated concept with this is the concept of kismet. What will be, will be. Christianity has endorsed its own version of kismet, that there is an inevitability, a predestined absolute groove in which history will necessarily write out, not correct, but inscribe itself. History will follow that groove because it is the inexorable way in which life is constituted. Very much wrapped up with those concepts is another concept known as original sin. The idea being that the entire human race is actually from conception on stained and contaminated with a blemish of mortality, if you will, sinfulness, whatever that is, if you will, evil intrinsically in its very innermost nature. This is blamed upon a poor, hapless Adam or Eve, but nonetheless, it is a concept which is taught in Bible schools and Sunday schools from the time when children can first give the nursery rhymes. They have that concept drilled into their sense of self, that is who and what they are. All of these variations on the same overall theme have to do with the filtering out of God consciousness through the very thick, opaque veils of misqualification built up within the soul or memory body of mankind. After interminable lifetimes of being born again and again and again into the same twilight, these false doctrines have spread like a virus around the world and been in so very many ways accepted as some of the most unimpeachable truths of life. They have, of course, caused mankind to accept the lie that they are of a different order altogether from the divine nature. They are offered up in many cases to try to put a rational face, to try to paint a rational picture, to explain away the appearance world that we certainly do have to contend with while in embodiment. And who, based upon those appearances, could possibly argue with how apparently powerful and overpowering are so many of the maladies and so-called evils of life, of human experience. For you who have been Ascended Master students of long standing, you have been offered a grace of no longer having to operate under such a shroud, especially as it relates to your own estimation of your own identity, your own true selfhood. More than that, something has been placed as a sword in your hand and a shield in your mind, where you are no longer obliged to quit the field of life, capitulate in the face of the appearance of these negative conditions, giving them permanent power in your life or over your life. This has come about because your teachers, the Ascended Masters, have left the very clear record of the correct deciphering of the so-called mysteries of evil or sinfulness or karma or juggernaut, all of these things which are really and truly variations on the theme of the very same thing. this is a very important tool and a spiritual weapon at your disposal, enabling you, as you have been encouraged by your Ascended Master sponsors, to consider that you may draw forth the threefold flame of your heart, to hold it in your hand as a scepter of authority, and in the name of your own beloved mighty I Am presence, speak to all lesser appearances and say to them, you have no power. The trailblazing work performed by our sponsor for this 2,000-year dispensation, beloved Saint Germain, work which he did as Hesiod, as Plato, and as Proclus, was able to decipher the otherwise inscrutable mystery of how such things could appear out here in the world of form and seem to have such power and yet not be real or permanent, is based upon the experiences in the heart of the great central sun, the experiences in reality, and the ability to utilize the divine intuition of his own beloved mighty I Am presence to draw aside the mask of what appears to be negativity and to expose it for what it is and what it is not in reality. It is one thing for all of the students of the light to have to work with these principles in the times when their lives are not in crisis, when there is a comfortability about them. At such times, it is easy to have faith and to make those calls. On the other hand, when your feeling world is confronted with something, when your outer mind is confronted with something that rears its ugly head before you and seems to have such power, then is when it would be most powerfully a shield if you were to have the understanding from the perspective of your own beloved mighty I Am presence, have the understanding of how these things have come to pass at all. And so for just a little while, we're going to lay the groundwork of that, because in understanding the temporal cause of negativity, once you understand its cause, you can cure the disease of discord and unreality. So it is necessary to actually have that grasp within yourself. The masters begin over and over again with God reality and the realm of eternal being, produced before there were ever time and space in the heart of the great central sun, and point out that in all of those realms, there is no direct or indirect foreshadowing of discord or negativity. There, as Plato says, there are no forms of evil or unreality. There are only forms of the eternal, permanent, changeless facets of the divine identity. Certainly, the cause, The causeless cause is the one and the good before that realm of eternal being. And if the good is that cause, how can there ever be anything other than the good that is caused by that good? The mystery is only explained really when you come to the understanding of the story of the Godhead charioteers. And you come to the understanding of the incarnate life stream possessed of free will and possessed of the life essence of each individual mighty I Am presence and the power of co-creation that is furnished by the mighty I Am presence out here in this world of form. And we see then how negativity and discord are possible in this world of form and not in the world of the reality of the Godhead. Because the only real source for discord or negativity is to be found in the so-called human self or soul. That is you will never find it at a higher point of origin than there. Having once created it, are we going to have the idea that the moving finger writes and having writ moves on and it can never be undone? Not at all. Plato said some most liberating things about this very process. Here is how he anticipated what we have today as the violet transmuting flame. In any case, when all the gods had come to be, both the ones that make their rounds conspicuously, as well as the ones who present themselves only to the extent that they are willing, the begetter of this universe, the Demiurgos, spoke to them, saying, O gods, works divine whose maker and father I am, whatever has come to be by my hands cannot be undone save with my consent. So right there you have the idea that what has been fashioned can be unfashioned should the maker of that choose to do so. While it is true that anything which has been bound together is subject to being unbound or undone, still only someone who was evil would consent to such an undoing of that which has been well fitted together and is in fine condition. This is the reason why you, who have come to be by my hand, are neither yet completely immortal nor exempt from being undone. But be at peace, for you will never be undone, nor will death ever be your portion, since you receive now the guarantee of my will, a greater and more sovereign bond than those with which you were bound when you came to be. Just that consciousness is a consciousness of any God presence. It is not a consciousness of mortality, but it is a consciousness of a God presence. As things are created by a God presence, so too they can be, if need be uncreated. There, the seeds of that are to be found. As Proclus, when asked to explain the nature of evil, Saint Germain had a very long dissertation, starting with the one and the good, going through both the universals in the great sea of life and the various hierarchy of ascended and cosmic beings, coming to the angels, and coming down to the guardian presences, which we now know as the Christ presences. And he certified at each level that all of these were 100% of the nature of good and never to be undone. And it was only when he came to what he called embodied souls that he identified there the faculty of free will and the ability to choose for themselves. And he said that they were invested with what was then known as a reasoning or a rational principle, which today we would understand as the voice of the presence speaking within the heart, as the voice of conscience, the promptings of the threefold flame. And he said, so long as embodied souls followed those promptings, they too would be good. But that having that free will, it was within their prerogative to choose other than that. And if they chose other than that, the creation that they made would be less than perfect. It would, in other words, be negative or evil. But in the same breath, he said, now the only material that they had to work with would be that which had at its core God good. And there would have to be a portion of good even in so-called negativity, so that nothing would ever be of the whole cloth or 100% evil. It would at best be a mixture of good and evil. The saga of the incarnation of the souls is narrated by Plato in one of his dialogues, The Republic, in which he describes a scene when a life wave of souls is preparing to re-embody once again. And the Demiurgos, the father and maker of all, the divine craftsman, addresses them all together. And, as it were, unrolls a sheet, and there before all of these souls is a gamut of possible types of lifetimes, which they, at that stage, are free to choose. They can choose the life of a tyrant who becomes wealthy. They could choose the life of a recluse who's never very wealthy, but could well be a student of wisdom, and a whole variety of choices in between those various alternatives. The proviso is given, however, that once the souls make their choices and the cycles begin, they will be bound to the choices that they have made. And these choices will follow them into embodiment And there will be a certain tendency for that choice to unspool itself into manifestation. Here again, you have principles of free will that are being extolled, coupled with accountability and what we now understand to be the impersonal operation of the return of all energy qualified back to the source that sent it forth. Good, bad, or indifferent. Everything that goes out comes back. And we know the difference between the two, obviously. So there again, he was not laying at the feet of any part of the Godhead the origin or the source of negativity. It was identified clearly in the free will election of the mankind of earth. While all of this, in one sense, may be very well established cosmic law to all of you, you have been looking at it from the perspective of your four lower bodies. You in embodiment, looking out from yourself at your immediate surroundings, perhaps looking out a little bit further at the world at large. In this conference and the Acropolis to follow, you are being encouraged to appreciate the perspective of the 12 mighty Elohim, all of the hierarchy, and the perspective of your mighty I Am presence. And realize that the choice is yours, whether you will continue to operate within the confines of what you consider your outer self to be, or if you are going to identify with your God presence and all of those other brothers and sisters ascended who are also in their God presence, and look at all of these things from the standpoint of the divine instead of from the standpoint of the human. Our liberation, which we have in the use of the violet transmuting flame, can be traced directly to the foundation that was laid in the correct understanding of the nature of the Godhead, the nature of the great central sun, the principle of God individualized, which allows for free will exercise on the part of the unascended life streams assigned to this world. You may never have considered this once in your entire lifetime, but elemental life is blameless when it comes to discord. Elemental life has not self-awareness, and therefore is moved by beings who are self-aware, moved by ascended masters and cosmic beings, or in this world, moved by unascended mankind. So elemental life is not responsible for what happens karmically, although they may well be burdened by it and be used by it. So free will comes into action, and really and truly, the mystery of how if God created everything and human beings are themselves creatures, there really should never have been evil either. So that has never quite been a mystery to be understood. How this relates to your life today and to the dawning golden age is in that God consciousness that by the one who has bound things through the exercise of the free will, that may also be unbound. The fruit of that is in the sense that even though negativity has been created by human beings, it is when the free will of the embodied life stream is utilized, then that gives the authority for the mighty I Am Presence to unwind the coils of discord that have been fashioned. We have traced negativity or so-called misqualified karma back to its lair, its cave. We have discovered that as it has gone forth, as an initial impulse of creative discord, it travels and returns back and takes up a long time residence within the memory body. And it is really there as a form of coils, windings about the living white fire core of that world. And it is sustained there by a certain percentage of the crystal cord energy. So long as it is compressed, it has an opacity about it, but it is not, as it were, active. When it becomes ripe karma, it unwinds that coil and applies pressure to the mind and to the emotions. It can apply pressure to the etheric body. And if it is not arrested, it will rupture into manifestation. Our freedom lies in understanding the authority of the mighty I Am Presence. To be as this demiurgos was, in the words of Plato, that I as the God Presence have the power to bind, to unite some things, and to loose them or disengage them. And so that is why one of the synonyms for the violet flame is the all-consuming love of God. In its creative aspect of outpouring, it is love, wisdom, and power in action coming forth in a clockwise spiral. So long as it suits the purpose of the God presence in any of the vehicles, that spiral continues in that way. But since there can be no real waste in the universe, once the usefulness of that creation has served its purpose, it is not going to litter the cosmos. It is going to be disintegrated, just as it was originally integrated together as a composite creation. And the vehicle for that purpose is the violet transmuting flame. Beloved Saint Germain explained once what his own initial encounters were with the violet flame. This was during the time of his adeptship, but before his ascension. And he described of how he saw these floating grids and force fields of starry overlays of misqualified substance, and observed as well this luminous accumulation of this violet substance, and watched as this violet substance, as he put his attention on it, actually seized and consumed all of that discord. And he experimented with that over and over again, drawing it forth and seeing that happen. And he went to his Ascended Master sponsors with the sense, he says, that he had discovered for the very first time something that no other part of life had ever known ever before, this violet flame and its ability to transmute. And he explains the demure Mona Lisa smile of his Ascended Master sponsors, who congratulated him on his discovery, but also informed him that throughout the cosmos, there is a coming to be of creation in the realms of coming to be, so long as there is a purpose for even constructive things. And when that purpose is fulfilled, they are not just abandoned there to litter the universe, but they are drawn back up. The substance is returned to the common storehouse of the tanmatras, they're known today, or matter, however you wish to call it, the great sea of universal light, and the momentum that joined with that matter is returned likewise to the causal body of the individualization who created that. So the Ascended Masters, too, have always had the fire of the seventh ray, flames of transmutation, for completing the life cycle of parts of creation that have come to be. Remember, these outer worlds, Akasha, the Buddhic plane, for all of their beauty, even the mental, the emotional of this world, these are stepping stones. These are way stations. These are not home. And once they have served their purpose and we have accomplished our purpose in them, they are no longer necessary for us. And we operate within the electronic body in that realm beyond the reach of time and space. So that has always been a part of the creative process. Once you understand that misqualification is really an aberrant behavior of God individualized beings, which, just as it has come into appearance, it can go away. Daniel, in a moment of overshadowing by the Ascended Masters, registering some of this, he described it as the beast that was not, but yet is. So he was wrestling with this appearance that he absolutely knew that did not exist in the heart and mind of God. Once you have that philosophical grounding and you have really worked it through for yourself, and you can stand your ground when anything faces you. Even, or let us say especially, the mistakes which each one has inevitably made. And you are able to say, as beloved Saint Germain has encouraged you, you have no power. And to call forth the light of the mighty I Am Presence to go into those conditions and to restore the white fire core of that matter, which has, even though there have been overlays upon it, never has the white fire core of any of those things been less than the purity and perfection of God, the good. As you understand this from the perspective of the mighty I Am presence and of the 12 mighty Elohim, a magnificent panorama unfolds itself for you to view. And I'd like to take it now from the standpoint of the shield of Elohim as it was this motif developed by Homer, by Hesiod, and Virgil. You might recall that on these shields, which were created by none other than the god of fire, Hephaestus, that many different scenes were portrayed. Now, the metaphor would not allow for the scenes to change on the same shield from one scene to the next. So the way that it was done is to have different scenes on different parts of the same shield. Most of the best of those were ideal scenes, but they were peppered here and there with gory scenes of negativity. All of those references are really a reference to the underlying pure divine nature of the great sea of universal light, as you have come to understand it, as the foundation out of which all creation comes forth. It is one of its best descriptors is as a mirror that reflects back the images that are projected upon it. I'd like to share with you just a few of the examples of that, retold at Saint Germain's direction, about one such actual mirror, the cosmic mirror, in the Royal Teton retreat. And then, having understood that as a physical implement here in the earth, then we will pull back until we are looking at that mirror as the way that the Elohim look at it, as on the shield of Elohim. Understanding that from all of those cardinal points, the Elohim are looking forth, and they can either see the records of what human beings have done in the past in this world. They can see the passing screen of each passing tick of the clock of Earth time. They can see the karmic foreshadowings of discordant events that have not yet happened, but may happen. All of this captured on this planetary large shield of what is happening here in our world. They can see those things, but they can also see the white fire core purity of the underlying pure matter of God, the pure great sea of universal light that has those things imposed upon it. They can dial out of focus the discord and dial in the white fire core. And dialing in the white fire core, they then have a pure white tabula rasa upon which to inscribe the events that are to take place. Once you arrive at that point, I think you can appreciate the fact that before these new, pure, perfect patterns can effectively be inscribed upon this cosmic mirror, the best thing to do is to dissipate and erase the other overlays that are distortions of the real. And that is where our use of the violet flame comes in on a macrocosmic level. Because even taking all of the so-called many billions of life streams upon this world over however many hundreds or millions and millions of years have transpired since the fall of mankind, even taking all of that in the aggregate and the totality of it, it is nothing of power compared to the power of the Godhead in the realm of being, life, and divine mind, which is omnipresent. This screen is just the outer afflatus of that which is the presence of God that is everywhere present. And it is the capacity of the Elohim and of every mighty I Am presence to, with the all-consuming love of God, to wipe away, as the statement is correctly stated, to wipe away cause of karma, effect of karma, the etched record of karma, and the memory of karma. It has never existed in the mind or memory of the Godhead, but it has been etched deeply into the memory of nature. But by the use of the violet flame, that which has been done is undone. Cause and effect, record and memory is wiped away. And that is one of the necessary stages for every precipitation, is the cleansing, the purification of that whatever is active at the time, ripe for transmutation or ripe for coming into manifestation, to have all of that wiped away. And we include in that very clearly, as you have it in your decree book, the Akashic records of the future. Things that have not yet happened, but are those coming events which have cast their shadow before them. From the perspective of your Christ presence and your mighty I Am presence, the things that we are talking about now are not metaphoric, symbolic, but they are literally the case. And when you approach them from the Godward side, from the wholeness and the oneness of the Godhead, all of those things that have seemed so mysterious are laid bare, and they are unable to evade or hide from the all-seeing eye of the presence. And therefore they are vulnerable and susceptible to the treatment with the violet flame. So let us rehearse this for just a few moments. Here is how Saint Germain described it. 40 feet from the end of the east wall, stretching 70 feet in length, 30 feet in height, a panel of precipitated material. More than 5 feet, starting more than 5 feet above the floor, recessed into the side wall, making a concave surface around the entire edge. The substance of which it was composed looked like a beautiful velvet of a deep indigo blue, but it was not fabric of any known kind. The nearest material to which you could compare it would be that of a mineral. This substance is not at all in the use of the outer world. It had been precipitated and served the ascended masters as a mirror for the instruction of initiates and other members of the Brotherhood. After greetings had been exchanged, we were conducted to our seats before the cosmic mirror on the eastern wall. In groups of 3 to 12 came the blessed ascended masters until 70 were seated. A ball of soft white light formed in front of the panel, increasing rapidly in size and brilliance, becoming an oval 7 feet in height. A most glorious, tall, majestic, and powerful being stepped forth, making the sign uniting the finite with the infinite. A blazing light flashed forth from the substance comprising the panel, until it took on the form of a mirror fashioned of living light. In a moment, this changed into a crystal clear atmosphere, becoming a cosmic screen upon which living pictures in all dimensions can be portrayed, with no limitation to the space that could be observed. It was self-evident that anything or everything that ever had or ever could take place throughout all eternity might be reflected onto this screen and made visible, if the directing intelligence of the Godhead so desired that it should do so. So then begins the description of a rehearsal of many of the past eras, times on past civilizations and so forth, coming up through recorded history, the Greek and Roman and Egyptian worlds and so forth. All of those were depicted there, and then it points out that the pictures continued on and now started portraying things that were going to take place in the future. Here it is possible, as we watch the cosmic causes go forth of many events and conditions found upon the earth. So they were actually able to see things happening that had not yet taken place. And that really is what our calls are all about, and this shield of Elohim is establishing for the earth. It is one of its actions is to go forth with the virtues and the momentums of the various gifts of the various Elohim, today being that of the gift of transmutation of Arcturus, which is going to transmute those overlays upon this mirror so that there is the clean white page that is able to receive new images. In this case, the images of the dawning golden age. You have the focus of Cyclopea's concentration on those images. You have the work of the other Elohim in so many ways. And I would like to remind you of the service of one additional cosmic being in this regard, whose identity is is clearly revealed in the name of the great silent watcher. The service of this cosmic being is to look within the heart of the great central sun, into the very white fire core of the great central sun, where there is this living, breathing, divine paradigm that is really expressive of the nature of God. That paradigm is the nature of God. And within that paradigm, which is so limitless, Plato says, the universe can't possibly outpicture it all. In fact, the only paltry thing that the universe can hope to do is to make a moving image of this original paradigm. At any rate, the service of the great silent watcher is to pay attention to the paradigm for our world and for our individual God identities, to focus on that reality and to keep a thread, a golden filigree thread of the Buddhic web of life animated between that paradigm in the heart of the great central sun and this outer world, to the exclusion of any lesser awareness. It is a one-pointed service of a constancy. If you think about the service that Mother Mary performed on behalf of beloved Jesus, it is analogous. You might recall when still she had not been united with Joseph, Gabriel appeared to her. In that visitation, although what is rehearsed in the Bible is that he simply announced to her the fact that she would give birth to the Messiah, to beloved Jesus. The most important part of that visitation is that Archangel Gabriel flashed into Mother Mary's consciousness the day star of destiny of the ascended Master Jesus, of him as the resurrected and ascended Master that he was to become. Not the newborn infant, not the boy of 12, not even the adept of 33, not even merely the transfigured or resurrected Christ, but the ascended Master, Jesus Christ. That is what Gabriel flashed into his consciousness, which he himself read by reading the record of the pattern of the electronic body. For there, that pattern is for everyone. And then it became Mary's job to be the silent watcher for that vision, to receive and to safeguard him from the conception on, through the crucifixion and everything else, to hold that pattern. So to the silent watcher's service to life is to hold that for every life stream and for the earth herself, for the Buddhic patterns of Regulus in that golden Buddhic light. So that pattern is being kept tethered to this outer world. The other Elohim are also obviously involved in this process. And that is what needs to be projected onto the screen of manifestation, brought forth more and more into manifestation on a planetary scope, on the scale of the whole world taken collectively. It is, as the Masters have said more than once, like the magnitude of the task is comparable to the labors of Hercules. The Hercules who was the hero of the Bronze Age is not the Elohim Hercules, but his namesake, one who follows in that lineage of that ray. And the message for all of us, having again to do with the magnitude of this dispensation of the shield of Elohim, is being aware of this, all of that impetus, that tremendous impetus and momentum of attainment of all of these Elohim is flowing forth now. And your privilege and opportunity is for you to unfurl the sails of your consciousness and to let them harness this momentum, for you to be carried along before the collective gust of that, to bring it forth in a manifestation. It's something that no one person could possibly do. But that is what the joint effort of the Brotherhood is doing with the dispensation of streaming golden helicon through the shield of Elohim. Only two more points to cover on this as it relates to the power of transmutation. One of the things now, based upon this background and foundation in how creation or how misqualification comes to pass, is to remember that some of the life, the crystal cord life, which is another facet of the action of divine power, some of that life has gone into creating and sustaining those misqualifications. So one of the most important decrees that has ever been released to the students of the light is the one that goes, in the name of the unfed flame, in the name of the great I am, in the name of the great God flame, I speak to my human creation, I speak to all the human creation of the planetary body. You have no power. You have no power. It is an uncanny decree. One of the most important times to rely upon that decree is if there should be any flaring of doubt or fear within your world, especially fear. If you find anything that intimidates, threatens, menaces you, causes you to feel peril, if you can stand straight and tall and draw forth the scepter of your heart flame and speak, you have no power. Literally, what you are doing is withdrawing the power that has sustained that thing and has built up that momentum. From the vantage point of the Elohim, all of this that we have out here in this world of discord is what Saint Germain called a tempest in a teacup. It is a paper tiger that is only inflated because it is being artificially sustained by God's power being misapplied and misused. And when the power is withdrawn, when the energy of that is withdrawn and redeemed by the violet transmuting flame, the appearance has no sustaining impetus behind it any longer. So that is why it is so very important for us to use that call, especially when anything comes up in our own life where things seem to be so overwhelming. During this Acropolis week, we will lay the foundation for something that has probably been taken on faith more than it has ever been really grasped with wisdom. And that is the idea that the presence of God is everywhere. The word being omnipresent. That the presence of God that is everywhere is also cognizing and knowing, all-knowing what is going on. And lastly, that the presence of God that is everywhere and that is all-knowing is also all-powerful everywhere. Literally every point of space, the presence of God is there at the white fire core. The mysteries of that are very important, because part of your mid-level courses as Ascended Master students is to understand that this presence that is everywhere is part of those universal aspects of the Godhead. One mind, one heart, one life. All of those are the universals that are everywhere. And it is the office of the individualizations of the Godhead, of individual mighty I Am presences. Those are the parts of the Godhead that have self-awareness and have an individuality to them. And it is the function and the office of those individualizations to command the allness of the Godhead, including this all-powerful presence that is everywhere present. When you start to understand the philosophical underpinnings for that concept, you will appreciate the shield of Elohim and how they are standing there in the great central sun, in that allness, with that sense of that all-powerfulness. And the only thing that stands in the way of it outpicturing is the collective free will of the human race. So when we use our free will to ratify the divine will, when we speak in the office of our mighty I Am presence and we say to those conditions, you have no power, we have been told as well that we may speak those calls on behalf of the entire human race, because our mighty I Am presence is one with the mighty I Am presence of every other life stream assigned to this planetary body. And that presence being one is the authority for it all. So when we give those calls, we are giving them on behalf of the entire world, and we are speaking directly to this that is the one being, the one life, the one mind, and the allness of that is this mirror, this stainless mirror of the heart and mind of God. And we are, with the violet flame, cleansing that mirror and following that up with the visualizations of the glorious golden age that is to come to pass.